It's time for Media Watch next on the programme at France 24's James Creedon. Good evening, James.
Hi, Delano.
It's been a bittersweet evening in the European Parliament. The last Brexit vote took place today. But you're starting with Nigel Farage. What do he have to do?
That's right. A couple of key moments that caught the Twitterati, I suppose you could say, caught their attention at least. And one was with Nigel Farage, who, of course, one of the major proponents of leave. We love Europe, we just hate the European Union. So, of course, that went down really well.
He said that?
Yeah. That went down, as you can imagine.
How to leave with a bang, huh?
Such a lovely thing to say in the Parliament. But we knew that anyway. We kind of knew that he hated the European Union.
Fake good words on the last day. No?
That's it. You might have, a dignified exit, maybe. So the dignified exit, that was not, indeed, because he then proceeded to wave the Union Jack very enthusiastically. And so there were quite a number of images with that as well. You can see here waving of Union Jack. Now, he was interrupted at one point by the Vice President of the European Parliament, who happens to be an Irish woman, Mairead McGuinness. She said, "Sit down and put your flags away. You're leaving, and take them with you. Goodbye." Which I think, there's not much more to say after that, really, because he did have to take the flag with him and leave, and it was the last time. So that generated a certain amount of comment. Delano, obviously a very divisive character. You either love him or really don't love him at all. In fact, some people find him horrible, and they were expressing that on social media. Nigel Farage says, "We are witnessing the beginning of the end of the EU." No, Nigel, we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the United Kingdom, and you bear a large share of the blame. So a lot of comments like that going up amongst comments that are jubilatory and congratulatory of Nigel Farage.
I'm surprised he didn't wear a Union Jack tie.
There'll be other occasions, I'm sure.
Maybe Friday. Now, in a nod to Scotland's desire to stay within the European Union, some MEPs broke into song.
That's right. So I'll read out this tweet first, and then we can take a little listen. Just as the Scottish Parliament was voting through the motion on a second independence referendum, members of the European Parliament were singing Auld Lang Syne after passing the Brexit deal. Now, Auld Lang Syne, a Scottish air, usually for New Year's Eve, but it's a song of friendships, parting ways and meeting again someday. So very symbolic. And you can hear, I think, the Parliament breaking into Auld Lang Syne. So that is certainly very strongly symbolic, and what it is sort of hinting at is that Scotland might want to join again, maybe even the entire UK if it down the track it remains the same state would rejoin. So there was a lot of discussion of that as well. How appropriate, how beautiful. Dear British friends, you will be missed enormously. So it was, I think, a moment of solidarity and friendship, and it was very much for the Remainers, or in particular, I suppose, the Scots, who have been very vocal about the fact that Scotland is being dragged out by the Brexit vote.
Against its will. Now, meanwhile, editorial writers are looking at the various scenarios post-Brexit.
That's right. This is a piece by Jeremy Cliff in the New Statesman. I thought it was quite interesting. I mean, for those who can bear to read any more analysis about Brexit, because we've been, I suppose, drowned in it for years now, this is quite a nice piece. So he says, look, for some Brexiteers, the future holds national resurgence, and now tragedy turned into triumph, history honoured and humour rewarded in the overthrow of external domination, a sort of a neo-imperial resurgence of old global trading networks returning. You can see the country spatters the world map with trade deals. So this is the future that many are sort of hopeful about in the Brexiteer camp. For Remainers, Brexit functions as a shock to the system, the proof that self-pity is unwarranted and destructive, that a positive, hopeful Englishness can find a home in a wider European identity. In this scenario, Britain sort of changes its mind, returns to the EU with its conflicts ultimately overcome and modernised. So there are two scenarios that he looks at. In the third scenario, he says things, and the one that he feels is the most likely, things remain somewhat unresolved. The country's innate sense of tragedy expresses itself in new forms of grievance, perhaps bound up with intensifying strains in the Union. As Scotland agitates for independence, tensions between unionism and separatism grow in Northern Ireland. So all of that is quite likely to be on the horizon. New outlets are found for the popular sense of loss and powerlessness, perhaps the targeting of migrants or welfare claimants, or maybe positive measures such as new pushes for English political institutions. So I suppose more of the same. So I thought that was an interesting piece to look at. A couple more videos just that were kind of gaining traction on social media, Delano. This is a Green MEP by the name of Molly Scott Cato, representing the southwest, I believe, of the UK. She gave an emotional speech. Now it's the time to campaign, to rejoin, but we must keep the dream alive, especially for young people who are pro-Europe. I hold in my heart the knowledge that I'll be back in this chamber celebrating our return to the heart of Europe. And actually, it's a very emotional speech, and you see at the end that... I'm not sure if the video will be able to catch up right now, but she was hugged by various other members of the European Parliament. So sort of an emotional goodbye. I think I'll see if I can pull up that moment at the end. Yeah, so she was applauded and hugged and whatnot. So there was a lot of emotion on all sides of the political
it is historic
equation.
what's happening on Friday. It is historic for our generation to watch this after, 47 years, Britain leaving the bloc. And
that's it. It's an emotional moment, I
did you
think,
hear about
as many
Nigel
say.
Farage's concert that he got like D-list celebrities to perform?
It's no surprise, no surprise at all. I'll just very quickly finish with Guy Verhofstadt. Brexit is a failure of the Union, he says. There is a lesson to learn from it to deeply reform the Union. It's our responsibility to make sure that the Union to which the UK will rejoin will be another one.
Thank you very much for that, James. James Creedon there with Media Watch.